watching closely.
What's the secret, Max?
You just gotta find something you love to do and then do it for the rest of your life.
I don't want to be a product of my environment. I want my environment to be a product of me.
Hello, and welcome to the Establishing Shot podcast, where we do deep dives into directors and their filmographies. I am your host, Eli Price, here with you on episode 79 of the podcast. I have Melvin Benson from the Cinematic Doctrine podcast joining me again this week. He was on with me last episode to talk Saving Private Ryan. We talked for a long time on that, and it was really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I hope you listened to that episode. It was a ton of fun. Melvin has his own movie podcast that I highly recommend checking out. He talked about it a little bit last week, so you can go back and listen to that. But what's like the elevator pitch for this episode, in case someone's just like jumping in and didn't listen last week?
Sure. So it's a movie. It's at its bare bones, it's a movie discussion podcast weekly, where we try to get out an episode that kind of is a mix of either popular zeitgeist or, as is standard with podcasting, the classic "I have a podcast, so I get to choose what to talk about this week" kind of thing.
Yeah.
And lately, I've been doing a lot of guest appearances, hosting people, and I've been finding that extremely educational, because it basically means I get to also be like a listener, but I digress. So yeah, if you're a fan of what Eli does, but perhaps a bit more scattershot, because you never know what kind of movie we're going to cover next the following week, you're probably going to enjoy Cinematic Doctrine. And then there's a couple different formats of episodes that are some more leaning comedy style, some more leaning discussion style, some more topical, so you can check all that out. But I would say that kind of gives that elevator summary.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and he has like different kinds of episodes that kind of centers the discussion in different ways. So that's real fun too. I think. Yeah, so definitely go check out Cinematic Doctrine. I'll make sure to like link all the ways you can find the podcast and follow Melvin on in the show notes. It's always easier to like have a link to click than to try to remember someone's handle or something.
yes,
I always
absolutely.
I always hate it when I like listen to a podcast and I'm like, oh, what did they say? Where did I follow them? And it's like not in the episode description. I'm like, come on, now I have to like go back and scrub through and try to find it.
Yeah.
But yeah, today obviously we're not doing a Spielberg episode. We are going to be doing a top 5. I think I've only done one of these before. I can't remember. I'm so all over the place with episode recordings. I don't remember if the top 5 I did was before this or after this, but anyways, this is either our first top 5 or our second one. I could check my notes and see, but I don't know. I'm not gonna do that right now. Let's see. I'm gonna double check if this is our first top 5 or not. I don't think it is. I think we did a top 5 at the end, towards the end of last year. So yeah, I don't know. I can't even see on my on my release schedule what I have planned. Anyways, so this is wonderful podcasting, by the way. I'm sure the
It is
listeners
the end of the
are
year. It is
loving
late on a
this.
Friday.
Yeah, we're in the middle
is
of
all
Christmas
good.
season while we're recording. So,
Yeah.
give me a break. I'm trying to enjoy the Christmas season, and but I thought it would be fun for this episode, since it's towards the beginning. This is not the very beginning of the year, but it's like right at the time when like
Sure.
maybe you're starting to slack on those resolutions and you need maybe a little bit of inspiration. So I thought it would be fun to choose it just movies that we find inspirational, kind of to help you start your new year off right. So we're gonna be doing a top 5 inspirational movies, and yeah, it's gonna be fun. Um, but I guess the question you have to answer first is, what is an inspirational movie? So I'm gonna throw it to you. I'm gonna throw you the question first, Melvin, and see what you say, and then decide if like you gave the final answer on it or if I need to add anything.
So I've actually just been trying to figure out, like, as a, because everybody who engages film
Mhm.
engages it very differently in different types of movies, and I kind of have such a just a bizarre mix. So, like, one of my first thoughts when thinking of like inspirational movies, like, at the bare minimum, like, Hallmark movies would fit the bill because
Oh,
they're
yeah.
just very cookie cutter, easy to consume.
Mhm.
They make you feel good, and you step away thinking like, yeah, marriage is great. Like, so like that definitely would fit the bill. But then I was like, but what do I find like inspiring? Like, what
Yeah.
inspires me to either perhaps think different or change, or has like been on my mind enough to have become almost like part of like my vernacular and how I see and relate to things.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of how I went ahead and collected my list. Was it wasn't just like inspirational, but it was like in things that have inspired me
Yeah.
to react or think differently. So I think by the end of the episode, when we've gotten through my like 5 that I've put together,
Mhm.
at 5.5, because I kind of came up with 2 for one of them.
Yeah.
But like,
Fair.
I think it'll be such a weird list
Yeah.
that, like, if someone sees Melvin's top 5 inspirational and then sees these listed, they'll go, "What are you talking about?"
No, I love it. It'll be one of those where like maybe people will see the list and like for like I don't know, a top 5 sports movies list, they would just like see the list and be like wrong or right and then move on. But this one, hopefully people will see it and be like, "Oh, I need to see what they say about that one." And
I mean, just to
that's an
like
interesting
peek
choice.
behind the curtain on like what to put on the list, I
Mhm.
almost put the Texas Chainsaw Massacre on this list. I almost had that on here,
That
and
that would
I will not describe
that would
why,
be a
but
hot take for sure. Um, you
it moves me. That movie moves me.
you definitely at the end have a breath of relief, I guess. But I think if that were on my list, it would be top 5 movies that after you finished watching it, you were inspired to try to avoid seeing it again.
To not watch again.
Uh,
Oh man, I can't get enough of that movie. It's so
yeah,
good.
it's
But it
it's
did not make it. It did not make
uh,
it onto the list.
well, I I can't say I'm relieved that it didn't make it because it would be interesting and it would made for interesting discussion for sure.
Oh, for sure.
Um, yeah, inspirational movies. I think I agree with you for this. I wasn't necessarily thinking of like heartwarming movies because I think that's kind of a different thing. Um, in a sense, like
Hmm.
there's a lot of movies that have like happy endings that leave you feeling like fulfilled and like
Sure.
happy and that uh, warm the heart, obviously, since they're heartwarming. But I don't know if that like when I was thinking of inspirational movies, that's not necessarily where my mind went. My mind went to what are movies that like move you to
Hmm.
think a certain way or to change or to, that that's the kind of the road my mind went down. So, um
So it sounds like we're kind of on the same
yeah,
wavelength. Yeah.
yeah. And so when I was putting together my list, and this will play out as we kind of go through it. I kind of like thought of different categories of like inspirational movies and tried to pick like one for each of those categories.
Mm.
So that's kind of like that's how I made it. It sounds very profound, but it's actually like I was just trying to make it easier for me to like cut out movies that I really wanted to put on, but like,
Hmm.
it doesn't fit this category. I'm gonna put this one instead in that category, that sort of thing. So
Smart.
it made it easier for me to like weed down my list. And I still have like two categories where I I'll probably choose on the spot when I get to it. So yeah. But yeah, top 5 inspirational movies. Let's jump into it. What are you gonna go with first? And I should say, sorry,
No, go ahead.
I'm
Go
throwing it to you and then I'm taking it back. Um,
ahead.
my list is not like a 5 through 1. It's not like in any particular order.
As is
And
mine. Correct.
yeah,
Yep.
and Melvin's isn't either, I think. Yeah. So don't see this as this is the 5th best and this is the number 1. These are just like our 5 that we've chosen. So
Yes, they
now,
all were picked to be parts of the team.
yeah, throwing it back to you.
Caught it. Okay, so even though this is we may have occasional mutual picks here, I still went into it with the mentality of it a draft, so I knew I had to put this as the number 1. It's a Wonderful Life.
Okay.
Absolutely had to be the first thing that I think I mentioned.
That's great.
It's also probably the most conventional of the 5 that would be, I think, when someone thinks of inspirational movies, this is one that comes up.
Yeah.
And because frankly, it's like 0.5, it's like 10% a Christmas movie. It's barely a Christmas movie. It's more of a drama. But yeah, I mean, it's a movie that like everyone has, for time immemorial, except for I guess the first couple of years it existed, has been like it's one of the best movies ever made. And then you watch it and it's like that's actually true. Like it is a wonderful work of filmmaking. It's great narrative storytelling. The performances are so modern. It's so good and it's so touching and it's so intimate and personal and grounded, all of that stuff, and it's just really, really wonderful. And it's also just so I think people are often shocked at how sad it is. It's a very dark and sad film, and I think that brings to light all of what makes it so wonderful, and it really earns itself its own title, which I mean, I always think about how the beginning of the film is this young boy consoling or trying to console a man whose son has died in the war, and the man may kill himself in that moment. Like that is how, like, that's the start of our movie, and like it is crazy. So or he might end up killing somebody else and then probably killing himself, but it's just so, it's great. It's just a great movie. So I absolutely had to start that one with inspirational. And then I think just as the final thing to that, since we both agree that like it's are these films that inspired us to think different or do differently, I think it's a film that really garners the importance of big and small things, or at the very least things we believe are insignificant or things we do not remember. I think it's a film that causes us to pause and even if we can't ponder those moments, to realize that they have existed and that you were at the center of those. And I think that that's just very meaningful and powerful. And it's all wrapped up in a film that is also very entertaining and very funny. So I think It's a Wonderful Life absolutely has to be on this list.
Yeah. And making the right choice when it's hard,
when it's really, really hard. Yes.
Yes, I totally agree. So this is not on my list. I feel like it's very appropriate since we're recording in the Christmas season, even though it's it's kind of a Christmas movie, kind of not. I've always seen this as like an extended Twilight Zone episode, which
that's such a good way of putting it.
Yeah, and that's how I've always like the first time I watched it, I was like, this is kind of like a really long Twilight Zone episode, but a good one. And yeah, I need to watch that again since it's still Christmas season right now as we record. I'm gonna pop this one on soon and watch it because it's been a while since I've seen it. And so yeah, it was definitely like on my extended list. It was one I considered but didn't ultimately put on my list. So since you went like what something people will conventionally think of as that, I'm gonna go with one that maybe people, uh, the just kind of the like average movie watcher may not have considered or have ever seen or maybe even heard of. And I'm gonna go with Akira Kurosawa's Ikiru. Have you ever seen this movie, Ikiru?
No, but I feel like I'm familiar with it. This is the one where it's an old man
Mm-hmm.
who's like about to pass, but he wants to finish one more project, and it's like a playground or something.
Yes. So
Hmm.
it's this old man. He gets diagnosed with cancer early in the film. He kind of has this like mundane, like bureaucratic government job where he's basically like stamping rejects on all the requests from people to like fix things in the city that he lives in. Like that's what he's done his whole life. And so like he kind of has this emotional when he gets diagnosed with cancer, he has this like emotional breakdown. He goes kind of like on a drinking binge and then eventually like decides that maybe it's not too late to like do something meaningful with my life.
Mm.
And you know, starts I don't know, he starts like actually impacting people's lives and making a difference and kind of the same thing like making it's not quite the same as like making a decision to do good when it's hard because it's hard it's hard in a different way. It's hard because he has to like figure out how to get through all the red tape to like
Mm.
make stuff happen. He's kind of doing it all behind the scenes. A lot of people don't even know what he's doing. I don't want to give away too much about the movie, but eventually people do know what he did, and he's recognized for that in a way. But it's it's just to me, it's like what a what an incredible inspiring movie to those who maybe feel like it's too late to start doing something. Um, because that's kind of like the whole point at the end of this movie is that it's never too late to like start making a difference. It's never too late to like do something good or to try to, mend wrongs. Um, yeah, and so yeah, it's really really an incredible movie.
Mm.
It is. When was this released? 50s? Yeah, 1952. You can find it on Max or the Criterion Channel if you have either of those. So highly recommend it. It is just it's probably one of Kurosawa's best movies. And that's saying something because Akira
'Cause he's
Kurosawa is one of the
yeah.
masters. So really, really great movie, really inspiring. Um, has a little humor in there, with some kind of characters he runs into along his drinking binge journey, and it's a really good movie. It's longer. It's like I want to say it's like an hour, 2 hours and 20 minutes or so. Yeah,
Mhm.
but I guess that's not too long by today's standards. But
Yeah, that's almost
in
isn't
1952, it was probably a
yes.
long movie.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I mean, even Seven Samurai. It's like
Yeah,
super.
it's shorter than Seven Samurai, so.
Man alive.
Hi. Quick reminder that you, yes, you, can be a huge help to the production of this show. If you visit establishingshotpod.com/donate, you'll find out how to join the Establishing Shot family through some giving tiers starting as low as $5 a month. You heard that right, only $5 a month. And not only will you be helping me keep the show going, but you'll also get some perks yourself, like early and ad-free episodes, bonus episodes, access to a Discord server where we can chat it up about the show and movies in general, and more. Might even let you choose a movie for me to review for the show. Check out that link in the show notes to learn more. Back to the show.
Yeah, I had You reminded me of another one. I don't have it on my list. Maybe it'll make a comeback. I'm like making a mental note here.
Mm-hmm.
But my second one that I have is a film that, gosh, since I saw it, I've just been absolutely in love with it. I've probably seen it. I saw it twice in theaters, and then I watched it several times at home. It's a criminally underseen film called Waves from director Trey Edward Schultz. This is the same year that A24 released Uncut Gems.
Yeah.
And then that, got completely ignored by the Oscars. Well, Waves ought to have gotten some love. But theater-wise, it released 2 weeks before Star Wars Episode 9 and Cats. So it was shoved right out the theaters after that. And I'm telling you, this movie would have been, if it was advertised at all, would have absolutely been an event film, because the 2 times I saw it in theaters, people were super engaged in the film. The premise is it's about a 2-hour, 20-minute film. I guess actually probably a lot of these movies we're listing are going to be about that long. And it's this is the softest of spoilers. It's basically 2 movies. And the first half is one character as they basically fall apart, and the second half is the family responding to it. And when I saw this movie in theaters, I almost walked out, because Joker came out that year. So I had already seen a movie where a man fell apart. So I just was like not in the mood of seeing another film of that happening. And then the twist happens where it switches to that perspective for the next hour and 20 minutes. And I like kept waiting, thinking we would go back to the other character, and you never do. And it just becomes this exploration of what took place and how it's affected everyone else. And gosh, I absolutely was moved to tears by the end of the film. I loved it so much. It absolutely helps too that it's a very like young millennial, late millennial, early Gen Z movie, in the sense that like it's very poppy, it's very kinetic. All of the songs are like late 2010s Spotify hits that like I listened to. So like I was on board the whole time. And so it's just impressive. It's such an impressive film. I really did not like Trey Edward Schultz's previous film, It Comes at Night. Not many people did. The advertising for that film was just atrocious, and then you go see the film and it's not what it was advertised. And then also the film, I just was not on board. Always wanted to go back and rewatch it. So I was middling on how Waves would turn out, but when I finished the film, I like walked out, was like, that's the best movie I've seen all year. It still is for that year, my absolute favorite. And still is one of my top 4 on Letterboxd.
2019 was an incredible year.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, it was like movies knew something was going to happen 2020, so they had to get everything out before it was too late. Like, it was crazy. Oh man. So yeah, I love this movie. In terms of like how it inspired me, I would say like I was just moved to, like, the film is really a lot about like a kind of forgiveness, but also a kind of understanding of how like as movies do, either in a college classroom or in a church, the theme of the film is shared. And in this case, it's a church where someone says, like, to raise a child, it takes a village to raise a child. And the point being made is that like the actions made by people are ultimately theirs, but they are created and cultivated through their situations and scenarios. So it's a film that really takes into account the like and challenges the watcher to think like, how have you affected others into like perhaps where they've gone wrong, and then conversely, how can you do the same to bring them into doing right? And yeah, it's a brutal film. It's a drama movie. It's not a horror movie, but I have described it to people as like an emotionally horrific film because it is so intense. But I implore you, if you are willing to endure a very hard film, this one is so good. And I think you're gonna love it. So absolutely check out Waves. I think it's so inspirational.
Yeah. This is one that fell through the cracks for me in 2019 because there was so much good stuff to see.
Oh yes, you could
And
not wait to see Cats. You were like, I gotta see Cats. I gotta save time. I'm charging my
I,
energy.
yeah, got to see
Gotta see
those
Cats.
CGI cat anuses. Um, no, that's not inspirational. I don't know what is. You can do anything
It
with
is a
CGI. That's the inspirational part of that.
it is such a like a regret of mine that I saw episode 9 opening night and not Cats. Nobody was in my theater seeing episode 9, and I
Honestly,
saw
I
it.
probably would have
It was
enjoyed that Cats more than episode.
oh my gosh, my wife fell asleep at episode 9. She like and the people in the theater were like laughing at the film. Like and not like the good kind that it
Right.
sounds like Cats was. So like I regret that decision so much to this day. Not inspirational, that's anti-inspirational.
Yeah. Well,
Anyways.
I'm gonna definitely move this up my watch list. It's like not streaming anywhere, but I bet I can find it at the library or something.
Local
yeah.
libraries, man, they got so many movies. They
Yeah,
have so
love
many.
it.
Mine has Criterion releases
Yeah.
and Arrow
Mhm.
releases. It's nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is one that I actually did really want to see and just didn't. You know how it goes. Like you move on
Oh,
to
yeah.
the next movie year, and like you're like, when am I ever going to get back to that movie year to catch up with the ones that I wanted to see but didn't? So
And do you do the thing where like, so 2025 is right around the corner.
mhm.
Day one, you're gonna go, what movie released today? I want to watch 2025
Yes.
movies.
Yes.
Okay, because I do that every year. January is brutal.
I say that, but January is usually like so like dry that I'm
yes.
mostly like trying to catch up on all the movies from last year because like I live somewhere where I don't get a lot of like the screenings that are like release limited and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And so like I have to wait until I can either like rent them or like catch them on streaming. And so I end up like in January catching a lot of those movies. So that I can kind of like fill in the cracks where I feel like I need to of like the last movie
Mhm.
year. But yeah, it is, but my mind does like halfway shift to like, ooh, what movies from this movie year are coming out
Right.
now?
It's like an addict. Like it's the second it happens, I'm moving on.
I've already seen like I'm on track to see more movies this year than I have any other movie year. I've just been like watching
Nice.
a ton of movies this year. But it does help that I got Movie Pass back.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
Yeah, I hear the new version's decent.
Yeah, it's decent. I've gone and seen a lot more movies in the theaters this year than I have been in the last couple years. So, yeah. So thankful for that. But yeah, so my next pick, I've decided I'm going to do this. I'm going to pick the 2 foreign language films first, so that I can like end it with ones that maybe people are more familiar with. And so I'm going to put these 2 at the top of my list where maybe people will see them first and be like, oh, I need to check that out. I'm going to go with one that I actually watched for this list because I knew it was one that I wanted to see. And this was kind of like my excuse to see it because it's kind of known for being an inspirational movie. And I'm going to go with the movie The Untouchables. It is a French language film directed by 2 French directors that let's see if I can pronounce these last names. Eric Taladano and Olivier Nakachi, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, so this actually has an American remake
Yes.
with Bryan Cranston and Kevin Hart called, what was that movie called?
I'm trying to remember also.
I don't remember.
I saw it in
The
theaters.
Upside. Is that what it's
The
called?
Upside. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I have not seen that. So I can't speak to like how good of an American remake that
Mid.
is.
It's mid.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured. This one though is really good. The premise is basically there's this man who is paralyzed, this old, rich, like well-to-do man, lives in a fancy house with servants and, you know, buys tens of thousands of dollars worth of, probably hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of art, because he can and he likes it, in expensive taste, but he's paralyzed. He needs a caretaker. He's hiring caretakers, and this man from kind of I guess, like the lesser part of town, you would say, um, especially class wise, he just shows up so that he can say he applied to a job. I'm assuming to get some sort of like government help financially. That's never really like discussed, but that's what you kind of assume. But the old man actually hires this guy. So it's like this well-to-do white dude and this black man from like the lower class side of town, basically. And what's really great about this movie is it doesn't really what's the best way to put this? It doesn't like overemphasize those differences, if that makes
Hmm.
sense. Like
Hmm.
it lets you see those differences because, they come from different places and have different lives. But it doesn't like there's no like green book speechy part, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah, yeah,
where it
yeah.
like overemphasizes that, hey, this is a rich white guy and a black guy, it doesn't like overemphasize that, which is good. But also like it's just it's a great like if any of the movies on my list are heartwarming, this is definitely one of the ones that you would say are heartwarming because these two guys who have absolutely nothing in common come together, they help each other grow in new ways. They grow each other's perspectives on like what they're capable of and what they like how they should be.
Hmm.
um you know the it's and it's really funny. Like there's this scene where he goes to the opera with them and like the opera starts and he just like the the so the the white guy's character's name is Philippe, and played by Francois Cluzet, and Omar Sy is the black character. His name is Driss in the movie, and Driss just busts out laughing, and he's like, there's a tree singing in German, and he's just like laughing, and everyone's shushing him, and I'm laughing with him because it is funny that there's a tree singing in German. um, but like there's a lot of stuff like that that's like laugh out loud funny, and then like a lot of just very touching moments, and the film ends of course with just like a happy ending in its own way, but not like a forced like inconceivable situation sort of happy ending, a very like realistic happy ending, which I appreciate. It's just like it's one of those movies where you watch and you're like, man, I need to interact with people that are different than me.
Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
and if this movie doesn't inspire you in any other way, that's the way that I would hope that you would take away is I need to befriend and talk to and discuss things with people that like have a totally different perspective than me. Um, I just think that's like such an important thing in life to grow just your perspective on life and your empathy for people that are different than you. And so, yeah, The Intouchables, great movie. I think people will really enjoy it because, like I said, it's a very funny movie all throughout. So
Yeah, I've seen the American one, actually not knowing that it was an adaptation.
yeah, hmm
And at least contextually, broad strokes. Yeah, it's a really interesting story that kind of explores those things. I don't know how well the commentary translated, the subtle commentary, so to speak.
yeah,
Because frankly, it was pretty overt in the American one, which would be
yeah,
frustrating. But I guess makes sense. A lot of American audiences need to be told very bluntly things about race relations, it seems. But
hmm
but yeah, it's one that I've seen has been on the top. I mean, IMDb top 250 has been the same for
yeah,
25 years,
yeah,
but it's been there
hmm
for 25 years. So
Yeah,
it's
it's
one that's always been on my list as well.
it's very well regarded, and yeah, it's just really good. I think you'll laugh a lot. I thought it surprised me how funny it was. I think
Mhm.
more than anything else, because I kind of expected it to be like emotional and inspirational, but I didn't expect it to be that funny. So
To be funny.
yeah.
So this section is where I basically put one in because my wife reminded me that sports movies are often very inspirational. And I
Yeah,
went,
yeah.
oh, yeah, I have to mention a sports movie.
Oh yeah.
But then it's also the section where, like, I wasn't personally inspired by them. So I very easily want to replace them.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm going to cheat and I'm going to say the actual inspirational movie I would put here is Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yes.
And in short, I would say that that's because I found the film inspiring, similar to It's a Wonderful Life, in that it very much understands the importance of small moments and
Mm,
how, and then also the importance of like you being the person in someone's life.
yes.
I find that film, I mean, that was a borderline spiritual experience seeing it in theaters.
It was. It really
And
was.
it was so good.
Yes.
And like that was one of the times where like you're hearing the hype, you're excited to check it out, and
Mhm.
you like, at least for me, I was not let down at all.
Mm-mm.
My shirt was soaked. I know the sweater I was wearing, it was soaked with tears. I asked my wife, do you have tissues? And she goes, I have one left. So like it was just crazy. Packed theater, everyone laughing, everyone crying. It was just great. So
Yeah.
but that's, that's the cheating side. So the actual thing I wrote down, though, was for a sports inspirational movie. I had jokingly written The Mighty Ducks, but I think it kind of works. After having rewatched that film this year, I found it pretty good. But I think in a more adult angle, I would say The Way Back. This was a early 2020 movie. I saw the Tuesday before lockdown. So lockdown was March 12th. Yeah, I think it was March 12th. I used to remember the day like exactly because the following day was a Friday the 13th, which
Mm.
is also the day we're recording. But that Tuesday was the last movie I saw in theaters before COVID, which was The Way Back.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
a Ben Affleck film where he he had been a coach, then he started drinking, but now he's been asked to coach again, and I don't think he has shared that he is still drinking. And
Mm.
there's it's a very simple film. It is not particularly like shooting for the stars, but it is just a very, very, very well made film that is the mature version of The Mighty Ducks or of insert sports movie that you saw as a kid.
Mhm.
And I found it really like, and ironically, like I remember hearing that Mighty Ducks was supposed to be quote unquote darker in that uh, Emilio Estevez's character, whose first and last name are based off of alcohol brands, in the movie, was supposed to be way more of an alcoholic in the film,
Mm.
and that would be affecting the film. The Way Back is basically that, but with basketball.
Yeah.
But it's an empowering film regarding like the hard battle with addiction, the tying of negative self coping to literally coping. You're coping with something else that has been unresolved and you believe is immovable.
Mm.
And so rather than trying to make change, you have begun to believe that you cannot make change. So and then rather than suffer the pain, you will numb it. There's this really simple, powerful scene where like he's getting ready to make a phone call and he's like, all right, let me just get a beer. I'm going to cool off. I'll prep what I want to say. So he goes to his fridge. He opens it. It's just tons of beers. He grabs one. He starts practicing. And then like it keeps going and he keeps drinking more. By the end, there's no more beer in the fridge. And it is just like, and then he's just like, never makes the call. And it's got a lot of scenes like that aren't like all sad. There's some
Mhm.
good stuff there too. But it's a very interesting film comparing how, as an adult with these unfulfilled things, then having to coach high schoolers and or middle school. I can't remember. I think it's high school, and how like the things they are experiencing currently could in theory become what he is. So he has to be very careful. I found it very effective,
Mm-hmm.
very interesting. I don't think it's great, but I do think it's inspirational in that sense.
Yeah.
But again, the cheating answer is everything everywhere. So I'll put that there.
I'll just put both of them on your list
Sounds good.
because, like, oh, you know, we're making up the rules here, really, aren't we?
We're like Calvin Ball. Yeah, we're just gonna come up with whatever we want. That's fine.
Yes. So I'll say this: the way back, I have not seen. I heard pretty decent things about it back when it came out. Just never got around to seeing it. Um, yeah, and it's been a long time. I was a kid when I saw the Mighty Ducks last, so I don't really remember a ton about it. Uh, but I will say Everything Everywhere All at Once is like has become. I've seen it several times since I saw it in theaters.
What a
And
movie.
it's probably like I would put it up there in like just like favorite movies of all time. It's incredible. I, I walked out of the theater saying this is gonna be like a movie of this decade. Um,
Oh yeah.
like this,
Yes.
it's going. I feel like I walked out feeling like this movie is like changing the game in a way, because of what it's doing with the medium of film. And
Mm-hmm.
so like it to me it was like not just inspiring for the ways you briefly mentioned, but also just like it made me excited for like
What's next?
yeah, what's next, who's gonna take like what they did here and like expand on that or do something different with it like they did. And yeah, definitely like any movie that can make you like cry when rocks are talking with subtitles is like a
Man
great
alive.
inspirational
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
Uh,
And what's interesting, just to add to that, I don't know what your average demographic for your listeners are, so I
mhm.
hopefully I'm not turning anyone off, although I'm not intending that at all. I have not met anyone over the age of like 38 who likes the movie. In
Hmm.
fact, they have actively either said, I don't get it, I
Yeah.
think it's bad, or I just I don't like it. Whereas
Mm.
everyone beneath it has been completely on board. And I think it's also just because the film channels so much like
Yeah,
modern zeitgeist, both in
it
terms of
is.
types of media. It is so weird. It's so kind of hard to keep up with in theory, although I think it's very simple.
Yeah.
But it's and then it's just like bombastic and it's irreverent in a good way. So it's just
Mhm. It's a very like internet age movie.
yeah, and I think it really yeah, it really turns off boomers. It's not a boomer movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't thought about that. I haven't really thought about that. But yeah, I'm like kind of I guess I'm like towards the end of the millennial generation. Um so like mid 90s kind of ends the millennials, I think. So I'm not the tail
95, yeah,
end.
95 or 96 is the
Yeah,
cutoff.
so I was born in 91. So like tail end of that, and I really love it. So
Yeah.
and from what I can tell, like eh, yeah, there probably is a cutoff like after the millennial generation, maybe, of people that like really would go for it. Because it is a challenging watch in the sense that like there's so much going on. But people that like kind of have grown up with the internet, or like, I didn't grow up with the internet in my early childhood or anything, but like starting kind of middle school, high school, it was there and I used it and stuff. So,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know, I was in the like LimeWire days of like downloading music on LimeWire and that sort of thing. So, it's I'm used to that enough,
Yeah.
and I'm in that world enough where like I can process the movie, but I can see like people that just didn't grow up with that, their mind being wired in that way, like being totally like thrown off by the movie. Um,
Hmm.
but I think like it'll be I think it'll be looked back on, in the future as a pretty important movie. Um,
Most
yeah,
definitely. Yeah, most definitely.
for sure. But The Way Back, I'm sure, is good too. uh, okay. Okay, since you went like sort of sports movie, a half sports pick. I guess I'll go ahead and because I did think of a sports movie for a category for me. And my initial thought was Remember the Titans, because that's one I kind of grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I kind of grew up with it, and it came out when I was probably in like late elementary, early middle school. I'm pretty sure. It's like early 2000s, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I would have been late elementary school, I guess. And yeah, it's always just been one of those movies that's like inspirational sports movie, but that's not what I went with. It's just the first one that came to mind. I wanted to shout it out.
Mm-hmm.
But this is one where I came down to two. And one of them is definitely more like more what you would think of as typically inspirational. And I'm gonna save that one though for honorable mentions. And I'm going to go with one that I think will be more interesting to discuss as an inspirational movie. I'm hoping you've seen it, and I'm gonna go with Damien Chazelle's Whiplash. Um,
I'm gonna disappoint you. The only Damien Chazelle movie I haven't seen, well, I haven't seen Babylon, but before that, the only one I hadn't seen is the only one I hadn't owned.
yeah.
Or the other way around. I had seen First Man, but I don't own it. But then I owned La La Land and I own Whiplash. They're still on the shelf,
Oh man,
unwatched. But I know I'll love Whiplash in
Whiplash.
particular.
Whiplash is
But
a ride of a movie.
mhm.
It is it's one of those movies where you forget that it does have moments where it slows down for a minute. Because by the end you feel like you haven't stopped moving the whole time. But
Mhm.
it does have moments of like slower levity in there. But it's a ride of a movie. It's for people that don't know, it is not what you would typically think of as a sports movie, because it is about an aspiring jazz drummer,
Mhm.
um, played by Miles Teller, with J.K. Simmons playing it's like this ensemble, this jazz ensemble I can't even think of the name of the school. It's like basically the top jazz ensemble in the country at this university that I can't think of in this moment. But it it's not a sports movie in the sense that it's about a sport, but it's a sports movie in its structure and its intensity and its drive to be the best, at what you do. Uh, Everything about it is like a sports movie, except that it's technically not a sport
Mhm.
at the center
Mhm.
of it. Um, and what I'll say about this movie is, it was hard for me to figure out, okay, this movie feels, because I rewatched it before making the list. I was like, this movie feels inspiring, but when you think about it for too long, you start to question that. Like, is it actually inspiring? Because he gets destroyed. And so J.K. Simmons's character, who's the instructor, is a couple of times in the movie goes back to this story of this guy that threw a chair at, I think it's Charlie Parker, or it's some famous jazz person.
Mhm.
And he threw a chair at him because he messed up or something, and then he worked really hard because of that and was pushed to be one of the best ever. And J.K. Simmons is he just berates his his students. It's definitely you watch it and you're like, this is not okay. You know, this guy deserves to get fired and never see, a university campus again. Like you can't do this to like to
Human
students or
beings.
yeah, to human beings. But like it's weird because at the same time you're like there's a point later in the movie where he explains why he does that and he's like I I've always like stuck on that story of, you know, Charlie Parker. We wouldn't have Charlie Parker if so and so didn't like throw that chair at him, and like I push like beyond the limits of my students on the like off chance that a Charlie Parker is coming through my program and that needs that push to be one of the greatest ever. And I'm like, oh, this is so like I'm so conflicted because I'm like, this is not okay the way he's treating people, but at the same time, it's like he kinda has a point because, like, the great artists kind of come out of situations like this, and a lot of the great artists, out of these, like, crazy situations and these wild experiences, and, um, I don't know, it's a very strange movie, but at the end of the day, it's inspiring because Miles Teller's character is, like he has this drive to be the best, or at least to be great, um, and to do something that he loves. He has like he loves drumming and he wants to be one of the greats and he has this drive and it's kind of like man, it's just inspiring to watch someone and
Mhm.
like that has that in them. Because sometimes that's hard to find in yourself, and sometimes it takes watching someone else, um, that has that to kind of, like, spark something in yourself. So, that's why I went ahead and went with it because I do think it's in there. It's just, like, amidst all the, like, crazy J.K. Simmons, yeah, it's yeah. Anyways,
Just a little twisted, just a little crazy.
it's yeah, it leaves me very conflicted, but, like, at the end of the movie, you're just like, "Man, that was a wild ride, and I want to go, like, become a jazz drummer now." Um, maybe just
Hire
not under
J.K.
J.K.
Simmons.
Simmons. Uh,
I'm sure the part of what will add to the confusion of the experience is also when you're going there to learn and
mhm,
grow. Um, it's kind of like in like, okay, I can shoot somebody in a video game, but I'm not going to shoot them in real life.
right.
And the same would be true as if I'm playing laser tag or paintball. Um,
Mhm,
and so when you're opting into a scenario of mutual agreement that permits some kind of like suffering,
yeah,
it is an interesting thing to think like, then what can be accessed? I mean, we do it when we
yeah,
exercise. We
mhm,
are literally burning our muscles with acids to then repair them, which makes them stronger.
yeah,
And
mhm,
so, but it requires a comfort in denying the ego to do that. And
yeah,
I'm sure like part of the whiplash of the film is seeing the tightrope that is going on. And I could see that being inspiring because it's
yeah,
about personal limits too. It's like
yeah, it is.
what am I not pushing myself to
Mm,
endure, but also what am I perhaps not standing up for that I ought
yeah.
to. So,
The
man.
exercise analogy is great because there is a sense in which everyone knows before they get into his jazz ensemble what they're getting into.
Hmm.
They know they're about to get, like they're about to be
Shoot
called
out.
things they've never heard before, you know yeah, it's
They're
it's
entering into the Instagram comment
yeah.
section.
It's basically like if you took the drill instructor from Full Metal
From
Jacket
Full Metal
yeah,
Alchemist.
and put
Or
him,
not Full
like,
Metal. What
in
am I saying?
charge
Yeah, Full
and
Metal
yeah,
Jacket.
in charge the drill instructor from Full Metal Jacket and put him in charge of a jazz ensemble. Um, that's what J.K. Simmons' character is, and so but they know what they're getting into, so it's almost like they're, like, willing to suffer that to
Yeah.
be great, to be a part of or at least, like, to be a part of something great, you know?
Mhm.
So yeah, I guess that's like the way you can say like, but also
That's all
like
I'll interpret
you had me thinking too. It's like that. I don't know that I could like say that that's okay in real life, but like in a movie, there's a sense in which like you're creating a fictional space where you can like have a character like that and like it not be okay in real life, but in the movie, like he's an important like
Totally.
representation of something that we all need. And so maybe that's why like you're so conflicted on him because like you're like in real life this is not okay, but in the movie like I'm being really inspired by this guy in a weird way, in a weird sadistic way, you know.
Hurts so good.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Hello again. Do you know how you can really support the show for free in just a few minutes or less? That's right. Just leave a rating and review on Spotify and Apple, or wherever you listen that might allow for ratings and reviews. These really help the visibility of the podcast. In fact, just hit that pause button right now and drop the review right now. And then you can get back to the show. I'd greatly appreciate it. Okay. I trust that you went and left that rating and review now. Back to the show. All right, what you got?
Yeah, my next one, I went with what I would consider the miniseries angle of choosing a quote unquote movie, and short run anime is considered miniseries in the States. So that's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with another one of my top 4 things is Puella Magi Madoka Magica. On its face, people would hear that and think, and if they saw like promo art for it, they would think that's bonkers. You are insane, Melvin. Why are you picking a magical girl anime? This is a show that came out in 2012, and it's kind of notorious as being like the show where the first 2 episodes are very normal, and then the third episode is normal until the ending when things get real. And since then, it's really garnered a trend of shows kind of trying to recreate this, but not quite understanding the material and just being edgy or just being like, my cute characters can't be so gory kind of nonsense. Madoka is not gory, but it is a serious story wherein these characters have a little creature say, I'll grant you any wish you want, and then you become a magical girl and you fight these things called witches. Now, just on like just to pitch it to people, because I think people should just watch this show. It's expertly animated, and when they fight the witches, they go into these realms that are so oddly animated. It is like some of them are papercraft, some of them are 3D CG, some of them are. It is so bizarre, and like when I rewatched it a couple years ago, I had forgotten how wacky the visuals get, and yet there's always still kind of an awareness of place and setting for these characters when they're doing these combat experiences. Now, on top of that, though, you start to learn like what you learn about what these wishes cost. You learn about what these witches are. You learn about why there's this mysterious magical girl who keeps killing the creature or trying to kill the creature that is offering wishes. And by the ending, when I first watched this show, I had no idea where it could go, where it would go, and where it would go afterward. There is a follow-up film that is equally as inspirational to me, but and is far more bizarre. It's like taking every bizarre director you've ever thought of and making them make an animated film. It is so Lynchian. It's so weird. But this series, the 12 episodes, ends in such a way that it's one of the only like secular, almost overtly secular depictions of like not a redemptive story, but like a story that makes me it's one of the only ones that I think captures really nuanced things that are unique to the Christian experience, which only makes sense if you watch the show. Because if you do not finish it, you're gonna really be confused by why I would even bother saying such a thing. I find this show so beautiful and so wonderful. I think the characters are so well written. Every 3 episodes is like a new act of the story unfolding into like a new thing that creates this really complicated and yet very simple machine that has captured these warriors essentially into something that is like so much worse than they think it is. And then the follow-up film, which I for until recently pretty much consistently flip-flopped, and if I liked it or hated it. Now I really love it. As is the case for me, if a film makes me think that way, like to the point where I actively dislike it or I very much like it, that has won me over. And the sequel film Rebellion is one of those. But yes, Madoka Magica, 100%, 12 episodes. So we're talking 4.5 hours if you were to watch it like in one sitting. This is just such good stuff. I totally recommend it. And then in terms of inspiring stuff, it was definitely something that oddly, like, I just found like made me think a lot about Christ in a way that some of these other things do not. It's in a way many things do not. And obviously that's a good thing.
Sure, yeah.
That's in its own way inspiring. And I find that it's an encouraging story about understanding sacrifice, cost, but also like the immense power an individual has to make positive and good change in others' life, understanding that it comes with massive individual cost, as in to say like self-sacrifice.
Yeah.
And sometimes continuing to labor that self-sacrifice produces far more good fruit. Yeah, if that doesn't sound Christ-like, I don't know what else could. But yeah, Madoka Magica is so good. I'm sure it's on something. It's totally worth watching. I don't know if anime is really your
Hulu.
wheelhouse. Is it? Oh, it's on Hulu.
It's Perfect. On Hulu and Crunchyroll.
Nice. Yeah, check it out, guys. Watch it, please. It's so good.
Yeah.
Y'all need to watch it.
Yeah, I've never seen this. I don't watch a lot of series, and I haven't seen a ton of anime. Not like shows anyway. And so, yeah, it's definitely like, it gives me Sailor Moon vibes when I see the poster. For some reason.
It's very innocuous in every way, and then it really starts to become more.
More
just
than that.
To give the final selling on this. It's written by a guy named Gen Urobuchi, and then a team of other writers that are currently working on the rest of the series. There's like finally another movie coming out after like 10 years. If you ever endure to get to Rebellion and finish that movie, you'll understand the pain that has been endured for 10 years since. But this guy, Gen Urobuchi, has the nickname of The Butcher because he's notorious for writing stories where just happy endings don't happen. And they're often very deep characters, very profound, very human, but often they're never happy in the end. The characters never get what they want, but they often learn something or experience something.
Yeah.
And I would say half true he does that with Madoka. It's half true that he does that. But yeah, so that's his MO. If that sounds like something people are interested in, be inspired to watch it.
Yeah, I really like that pick because it's so different than probably like all the other picks that are going to be on our list.
Yes.
Yeah, let's get some, variety in here. I like it.
The soft amendment I'll add to it, or not amendment, addition I'll add to it is it's very similar to Neon Genesis Evangelion, the original show, not the rebuild films. And I would say that the original show and the end of Evangelion are also inspiring, but those are challenging, weird pieces of media. So, but if someone is a fan of those, they'll definitely be a fan of Madoka.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, there's like, anime has like a pretty wide audience, like surprisingly. So,
I feel like it's getting bigger every year. It's huge.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things that like people probably don't realize like how many people actually like watch anime.
Mhm.
It's a wide audience. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna go with my next one. So I've hit some different categories. This category is uh I was trying to think of movies that like where you work past like your circumstances and or like your fears, um things that like
Predator 2,
walls that like yeah,
where
Predator
he's scared of heights,
2.
and there's specifically a scene where he has to jump from building to building.
Yes, I'm not picking Predator 2. I'm picking a movie where like to pursue your dreams, there you have to like work past everything that's in your way, whether it's internal or external. And
Mhm.
so for that category, I had to go with Greta Gerwig's version of Little Women. Um, loved this movie. Saw it in theaters with my wife. I've watched it once or twice with her since then. Um, and I like the 90s Little Women too, but this one I really, really loved.
Mhm.
It's for one, it's just like a classic story of these four sisters who have their own different personalities and different challenges because of their personalities and their situations and different they each kind of have their different dreams and their different like aspirations, and so you really are kind of getting like four inspirational movies in one when you watch Little Women. um, it's centered around Joe March, who in this movie is played by Saoirse Ronan, who I think is just an incredible actress. Um, and so like she kind of like takes center stage. But like the other, the other March sisters like have their own like kind of stories in that bigger story that is Joe's as well, that are inspiring in their own rights, and they all, they're women in in the like aftermath of the Civil War like era, trying to like pursue what they want to do and who they want to be, and that's not a easy time or place for women to do that.
Mhm.
And so yeah, it's just I love the way that this movie is framed. It kind of jumps back and forth in time in this version in a way that I think is like really, really like well thought out, um, and profound in the way it does that. And yeah, I don't know. I just every time I watch this movie, I just feel inspired to like I don't know, do what I feel like I'm called and made to do, despite any challenges that might be in the way. And then two, like, I have a wife that, you know, that is a woman in this world that I want to pursue her dreams and I want to support her. I have a daughter now that like I want to be, I want to feel like she can pursue and do whatever, she feels like she's meant to do. And so, I don't know, there's just so many aspects of this movie that I think are just like so wonderful, so great, so inspirational. Um and then like two, like Laura Dern as um the mom Marmy March in this movie is just so good. Like I'm like that's like the aspirational like parent,
Mhm.
that's like the kind of parents like we should all aspire to be, to like be able to see who like each of our very different children need us to be, and to like do our best to be that for them in the
Mm.
different ways they need it. um yeah, and man, there's just so many, like I said, there's so many ways this movie is inspirational, and it's just an incredibly made film too. It looks phenomenal. It's just good all around. Love it. Have you seen this, Little Women?
I can't even remember the last time I watched a Little Women. I feel like growing up, I might have watched the '90s one or
Mhm.
even an older
With
one.
Winona Ryder and
Yeah, I think so. It was either that or The Secret Garden.
Mm,
Because I don't know why. I think as a kid I always mixed the two up. Probably just because they're
that's
aesthetically
fair.
kind of similar.
Yeah,
But
yeah, it is.
um, but no, I hadn't seen it. I mean, I obviously loved Barbie, like most
Hmm.
people. But I had totally ghosted Lady Bird, and then I didn't see Little Women.
Yeah,
So I having seen Barbie, and then hearing that like some people say the other two are the
they are.
better of the three,
Yeah.
like I want to check those out.
Hmm.
So I'm this recommendation definitely makes me more interested in
Yeah.
seeing it. That's for sure.
Barbie's like the pop version of like Greta Gerwig, and that's not a bad thing. It's just like these these are just like Lady Bird and Little Women are um I don't know, they're more like intimate stories that aren't like
Sure,
that don't have like the weight of IP on them.
IP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh
Yeah, Barbie also should have been shot on film.
yeah.
I don't know why that movie wasn't shot on film.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah, you
man.
definitely need to see Little Women. It's Greta Gerwig's version. It's really really incredible. It's my favorite of hers so far. So
I heard from some people too, like that was their favorite of the year.
yeah,
And that
it's
was also a fairly stacked year.
yeah, another 2019 movie. Yeah, it was up there for me. I'm trying to see where it ended up on my 2019 list. Number 6. I could probably move it up to 4 or 5, honestly.
We're doing it live. Screw it. We're doing
It's
it live.
yeah. I like 3 through 7-ish from that year. I could probably like move around, you know.
I've been thinking of doing that exact thing. Maybe maybe that'll be a Patreon exclusive discussion is switching my ranked of the year. There's definitely a couple I think about.
Yeah.
Um, the last one I had is another odd one, as these all have been. This is probably the most. This is the most recent one.
Okay.
Tar.
Oh, yes.
Loved this movie. It was the movie that for me beat out Everything Everywhere as the best movie of that year.
Mhm.
This one absolutely just it. Gosh, it's so good.
It is so good.
It hit me in a way that was very different from EAO, but it was not in a way that was less by any means. Like I
Mhm.
didn't step away from it weeping, I didn't step away from it laughing, I didn't say, but it was so profound in itself that
Yeah.
I just was just like that. Like yes, Everything Everywhere absolutely shows you like what movies can do and where they can go.
Mhm.
But Tar like really like it's just movies.
Yeah.
Like that to me is like the word. And yeah, like it's an amazing, like on its face value, it's an amazing fall of a character, like just falling, the house of cards tumbling. Like that to
Mhm.
me is all great stuff, and it's in a way that isn't necessarily theatrical or overly dramatic. It is very grounded in its stupendously slow pace.
Yes.
The
Yes.
events, not so much the film. I think the film is expertly paced.
Mhm.
But it is it's great. I love this movie. I absolutely love this movie. I think it's one of the just like Everything Everywhere. I mean, obviously, if it beat it out for that year for me, I think it's also one of the films of the decade because it's just that effective of a
Mhm.
performance. It's visually very pleasing.
Kate Blanchett.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, Kate Blanchett is such a good performer
She
here.
is
Like
Lydia Tarr.
it's crazy. It's so transformative from the minute the film starts.
Mm.
It's so good. In terms of like what this film inspired for me, like I had never seen a depiction of what I'm about to describe so perfectly. I think the film really showcases the complete like I would almost say listlessness of human power.
Mm.
That everything we know as Christians, everything that is in our lives has been given to us by God. And one of the aspects of which makes sin so egregious is that we are taking what God has given to us to care for, to look over, to produce, to do good things with.
To make
we then
flourish.
do bad things with. Yeah,
Yeah.
we anti-flourish essentially. And I found that this film so perfectly showed how someone at the top essentially looks at the world as something of their making and their creation. The start of the film, she's describing, so she's a composer. The start of the film she's describing is like how she essentially takes people's music and creates her own compositions out of them, and they become hers, and it is her job as the composer to draw out of people and to make them into something else. So she is very much she's quite literally, like, as a composers are undoubtedly important.
Yeah.
Correct. Conductors are undoubtedly important to the ensemble, but they are waving their hands around. It is everyone else making the music. It is everyone else constructing the music. It is everyone else actually composing the music. That's the correct use of the word.
Yeah.
But what is she doing? She ultimately really is subservient to the music, and yet she is, throughout the film, she is in control of everything and has understood how to do that, to get what she wants, which is awful. And it is, and then by the end of the film, she essentially has this thing where she very clearly says, like, when we play the music, we want to know what is the composer's intent, which she would never have said at the start of the film,
Right.
because she does not care about other people at all. It is such an amazing depiction of that. There are these moments in the film where one of which is she's jogging and there's a scream from the distance, and then she then goes back to her where she's conducting, and she says, I want to make a sound like it's far away. And she acts as though this is inspired and born out of her, but it is actually something that happened in the world around her based on something terrible that may have been taking place. And it's just, there's so many things like that throughout the film that are constant points of reference to the fact that, like, yeah, everything that she has been given to her, and everything is going to be taken away.
Yeah.
I could not stop thinking about God's sovereignty and justice and kindness, because in the film, God has been very kind to give her the position of power she has. And then she just continues to be awful. And I could not stop thinking about my own life and the kindness God has shown me, and like the repentance that poured out for me, thinking like what hubris I've had to treat the gifts that God has provided for me, the world he has created so much, and to just treat these things like they're mine. And then even if they were, I wasn't even treating them rightly. So yeah, I think Tar is absolutely inspirational in a very twisted, bizarre, creepy way.
Yeah. Well,
but it totally fits the bill.
It's inspirational in the sense that it's I guess like essentially a cautionary tale in a way. Which, that's kind of what a cautionary tale is meant to be, is to inspire you to not do what the character does in the movie.
Yeah.
In the same way that, like, I guess you could say like a lot of Scorsese movies are cautionary tales, like in a way, like inspiring in that way, like be inspired to not be like this person,
Yeah, like The Irishman's a good one.
Yeah,
for that.
exactly.
It's perfect
Yeah.
for that.
The Irishman, like a guy at the end of his life having, there's this profound moment with a door at the end of that movie, that is closed because it's too late, for it to be opened again. And, if you watch it, you'll know what I mean. But yeah, Tar is one of the things that I haven't seen it since I saw it in theaters, which I feel very lucky to have seen it in theaters because
As do I.
it
Yeah.
ran for like 1 week here, and
Yeah,
where
it
I
was
am.
short here too. It was like in, out, and it was I think it was like January or
Yeah,
February. It was
mhm,
like for the Oscars. It wasn't even for like
yeah,
money. It was
exactly, yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah, and so I was felt lucky. One of the things I remember though, um, in watching that movie is that it does so well to like really it put a punch and emphasize. You were talking about the pacing, and it will sit in these moments, and it'll sit in moments, in quiet moments where you have to
Hmm.
think on what's just happened and process it as the character on screen is processing it and thinking through it. Um, you're simultaneously like just watching them wondering what she's like, what is Lydia Tarr thinking?
Yeah,
Is she gonna change now? Is she gonna be better now? What if like you have to, and then through that you're also processing yourself, like what about yourself and what you would do in that situation. You know, and so yeah, there's just these moments where the camera just sits and watches, that I think are very like essential to like everything you're talking about this movie being. Um, yeah, phenomenal movie. Yeah.
great film
And definitely
and
like
funny too.
yeah, it is funny.
There's some good jokes,
Yeah.
situational at least. It's good stuff.
Yeah, this was up there for 2022 for me. It's behind another very inspirational movie that'll be an honorable mention for me probably. Um in addition to that, Everything Everywhere at Once. I still had higher than it, but Um my last movie, I saved this for last. Um I love this movie. It is you mentioned this with Everything Everywhere All at Once, but it's a movie that inspires you um, to remember that life is about all the small moments that make it up. It's not about the big accomplishments. It's not essentially about like all the landmark moments of your life, but it's about like the small little moments with people and with the world around you that add up to a life. And so Everything Everywhere at Once has that as one of its major themes, and I've strongly considered it for this. But I wanted some variety. I wanted to get an animated movie in there, so I went with my favorite Pixar movie, which is Soul. Um,
Ooh, good pick.
I love Soul. I've seen it a few times. Uh, it is very funny, very fun movie, very inventive. Um, in kind of its conception, you can see like inspiration from some kind of older movies that deal with uh death and the afterlife and like humanity wanting to like have a second chance. um I actually I watched a Powell and Pressburger movie to see if I wanted to pick it for this draft, called A Matter of Life and Death. That's kind of you can see like as inspiration for like the concept of the movie Soul for sure. Um, but this movie, I'll say this: it it has this moment that I actually like when I was preparing for my list. I was like, let me go watch this scene that I remember from Soul. And so I pulled up that scene. I didn't rewatch the whole movie, but I pulled up that scene on YouTube, and just the few minutes of that scene, like I was crying just from watching it. Um, it's this like beautiful moment where so the character, our main character in Soul is oh man, I lost my list. There we go. His name is Joe Gardner, voiced by Jamie Foxx. He basically like he's on his way to play. He's a jazz teacher at like a high school or middle school or something, and he's on his way. He's about to get like his big break. He's never been like a successful jazz player, but he's aspired to be. He's about to get his big break and get to play with this jazz musician that is going to really like get him to where he wants to be. finally, and he falls. This isn't really a it's if you've seen the previews, but he falls into a manhole and dies on his way
Hmm.
there. And so he ends up in this afterlife, and there's these like, I don't know, like sketched kind of people that are like in
Hmm.
charge of
It's
like,
cool animation. Yeah.
yeah, the afterlife. Don't they all have the same name or something? Um
The
uh,
the sketch things,
they
yes, they
are
look like
Terry. Is
yeah.
that, yeah? They're all oh, there's Jerry's too, I think. Terry's and Jerry's. Anyway, it's very funny. And they're in this same like little afterlife world, there's also all these like new souls that are getting ready to like go to Earth, um, be sent to Earth. And so very imaginative, very fun. But essentially like he has this like unwanted friendship that buds with this soul that is scared to go to Earth to become a human. Um, and essentially like through that relationship, and the way it's explored, just comes to realize that his life is not defined by what he does. His life isn't defined by, what he accomplishes at the end of his life, but his life is made up of those small moments, those small meaningful moments with someone you love,
Mhm.
or even just like there's this recurring image of one of those like little, I don't even know what they're called. There's little like whirly things that fall out of a certain kind of tree. It's like a
Yes.
seed like falling into his hand, and him watching it fall into his hand, like that small beautiful moment of, you know, the world, interacting with the beauty in the world around you. Um, and yeah, there's this moment where that all culminates in the film that I think is just beautiful. It makes you want to just like kiss your spouse or hug
It's
your
great.
child, or, you know, have a little dance party with your kids or your nephews, or, when the song comes on, it makes you want to just like look at a tree and enjoy how beautiful it is, and pause and take in those moments. And so, yeah, I love this movie. It's inspiring for all those reasons. It's my favorite Pixar movie. So, yeah, Soul.
Yeah, that movie is like a great depiction of like how mindfulness,
Mm,
the idea of being in the present moment,
yes.
is so overwhelmingly like just overwhelming. And
Yeah.
then it can be good or bad depending on the present moment. But
Mhm.
most moments are, even the mundane ones, when you are then present in it, become like immaculate. They're
Yeah.
really wonderful.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I when you were saying Soul and you talked about one scene, that was the first scene I thought of, was that one too.
Yeah.
Uh,
Hello there, listener. Don't you ever want more for your life? Don't you ever dream of surpassing the status of just podcast listener? Well, I've got good news. If you head on over to establishingshotpod.com and click the send a voicemail button on the right side of your screen, you can be featured on the podcast. I'd love to hear from you, whether it's a comment in response to an episode you liked, an opinion of mine you disagreed with, or just a question for me. And if you're too shy to have your voice featured, you can always email me at establishingshotpod@gmail.com. Don't settle for just being a podcast listener. Reach for the stars and get featured on The Establishing Shot. Back to the show.
yeah, going into honorable mentions, jumping with Pixar, Wall-E is one of the first things
Yeah.
I thought of.
Mm-hmm.
I think Wall-E's great. I think I had difficulty putting it on the list because I would have difficulty narrowing down what is inspiring about it.
Yeah.
Because I think there's several
hard.
things.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that movie is just like, it's so brilliantly made.
Mm-hmm.
It is appropriately a part of the Criterion Collection now.
Yeah. I have it.
I do too. It's one of the
Yeah.
best ones, honestly, that they've ever put out. It's so good. That one's great. but yeah, that movie is just stellar.
Mhm.
Very good stuff.
I rewatched
Really them at their peak.
Yeah, I rewatched Ratatouille with my wife recently too, and that would probably be another one to consider for inspirational movie for sure.
I want to rewatch all the early Pixar's and kind of move
Yeah.
forward through them.
We've
Probably
been
drop off around Cars 2, but
we watched through it took us several years, but we watched chronologically through all the Disney animated classics.
oh, cool.
Um and so we watched them like in order of release, all 60 whatever of them. And it took several years, and now we're doing that with Pixar. So we're actually Wally is the next one up. So we just watched Ratatouille.
Great.
We're gonna watch Wally next on our chronological watch through. So it's a fun exercise. It's a really you should consider doing that with your wife. It would be a fun little exercise to do.
I had done some of the Pixar shorts, the early ones. That
Mhm.
was a ton of fun. Luxo Jr. is just as good
Yeah, it is.
as it is. I mean,
Mhm.
it is such a brilliant showcase of what you can do with 3D animation at
Jerry's
the time.
Game.
So good. Yeah,
Jerry's
that was
Game.
fun. Yeah, so those are a ton of fun.
Yeah.
I think I was doing those because I was doing like a movie a day at the time, and I counted short films for a period, so that was a ton of fun.
Mhm.
But yeah, so Wally would be one of my honorable mentions. What's one of your honorable mentions?
Yeah, so I'm gonna like name off a couple of animated ones that I considered along those lines. Is Moana? I've always felt very inspired by Moana, just like having this calling coming from outside of you and trying to chase that, despite everything around you saying it's not a great idea. Um, the anime, I guess you could say, if you consider movies anime, which I do. Um, that I considered was Kiki's Delivery Service.
Mm-hmm.
Um, great, just a great like fully formed look at like a coming of age movie, like discovering yourself, discovering your place in the world, discovering how to get through the difficult parts of life. Um, yeah. And then the other one that I guess you would say is animated, it is, it's stop motion, would be Marcel the Shell with Shoes On.
Oh, cool. I
Love
totally
that.
ghosted that one. I hear it was great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
love that movie. It's another like movie about it would fit into the same category of like Soul, of like those small moments being profound and meaningful. So
Mm-hmm.
those are a few of my like animated ones. Do you have any
Mhm.
other honorable mentions? I have a few more that I can mention.
I totally had one just on the top of my head that I wanted to mention. What were the three you literally just mentioned? Because that'll remind me.
I said Moana, Kiki's Delivery Service, and Marcel the Shell with Shoes On.
Oh, okay, I remember now. Godzilla -1, obviously.
Oh yeah.
That one, just a brilliant film. Big fan of Godzilla, big fan of kaiju stuff. I
Mhm.
think the concept of a giant monster is inherently cool, as most people do.
Yeah.
And I thought Godzilla -1 was not just an amazing theater experience, but also like an amazing like film about social change and
Mhm.
social healing.
Yeah.
It is a really wonderful film about the importance of like the coalescence of goodness through different people.
Yeah.
It's also a very comforting film to watch, like having further understanding of some of like modern Japanese history,
Mhm.
because it's a very post-war movie. Frankly, just like Shin Godzilla, but not nearly as cynical, nor as although Shin Godzilla is cynical but hopeful. This one is much more just hopeful.
Yeah.
it's a very good looking movie, very good, fun movie to watch.
Yes.
It's emotional. It's also scary. Like Shin Godzilla is freaky because the Shin Godzilla creature is freaky. Like
Hmm.
it, and that's just part of oh man, Hideki Anno's penchant for creature design.
Mhm.
But Godzilla -1 is scary because it's just so well directed that Godzilla
Yes.
is a very scary monster in that movie.
It feels very like you always feel like So it would be
I feel like the world's ending if he shows up.
the American Godzilla's like almost go too big with it, and this one makes it so intimate with the way that it's shot and the perspective of the characters, and you always feel like you're in danger of just like becoming a victim of what Godzilla is doing. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does.
Yeah.
Like even I mean, like, little spoilers, he gets bigger. Like
Yeah.
his size in the beginning of the movie is just as intimidating and frightening to me as his size at the end of the movie. So yeah, that movie's a banger, and absolutely inspirational. I mean, it's such a touching film with all those considered. It kind of encapsulates a lot of the stuff we've mentioned throughout this episode. So if you're wanting something a bit more big and blockbustery, Godzilla Minus One is absolutely one of them.
Yes. I'm gonna Spitfire. Do you have some other ones that you would want to mention to Spitfire? Just like blast off some, because that's what I'm about to do. But I'll let you go first.
Well, I joked about Texas Chainsaw, but I'll toss that one in for real. Because it was for real initially. That movie, that the simplest read is it inspired me to go vegan. That is untrue. But the film is very much a like hyperbolized, extravagant metaphor of like meat and relationship with meat.
Sure.
Because it has, this monologue about how they kill cows and someone's like, no, stop. That's awful. And it's like, no, it's very humane. They just press a button, this thing goes in their brain, they die. It's amazing. And someone's like, that's awful. It's terrible. And then, the rest of the movie unfolds and we watch as these humans are brutally killed and eaten. And not gory by any means, actually, just very suggestive. But it also is this really interesting depiction of like the way then humans treat one another. There's this scene. Oftentimes, the film has been misunderstood as being bad by people because they are watching the scene where Franklin, I think that's his name, is in a wheelchair trying to get up steps. But he can't get up the steps because he's in a wheelchair and he's having a lot of difficulty. Meanwhile, his friends and his sister have run inside of this house that's sort of dilapidated because they want to like, kiss or whatever. And they're just leaving him out there. And so some people would be like, that's a dumb scene. And they would have issues with many other scenes, I'm sure. But then later in the film, you watch as Bubba, who is, Leatherface, and his brother gingerly carry their grandfather, who is in a chair, down some steps. And it is a massive contrast to the way that the humans who are normal treat each other. And there's very many parallels between sort of the othering and bizarreness of people and also the inhumane ways in which people treat each other, while also having this grounding of the extravagance with, Toby Hooper's bizarre mind. I found that just very inspiring in terms of the hyperbolized metaphorical mind games of human treatment, as well as treatment of creatures, basically the treatment of sentient life. And then I also just think the movie's great. So I at the last few times I've seen the film, the last time I actually saw it in theaters, I have wept at the ending because I just find it so moving in the way it just showcases these things. And the fact that it is also, as a Christian, the fact that it is so overtly rejected by fellow Christians, to me, adds to the sadness that I experience at the end of the film. Although I do understand it because it is a very hard film to watch.
It is.
And then
it is very hard to watch. It is.
It's exhausting. It's one of the most exhausting movies to watch.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, incredible filmmaking.
So good.
I'll probably watch it again at some point in life, but it'll probably I'm not like itching to watch that movie again. But I think it's one of the best horror movies ever made.
It still stands up. It's so freaky. And the sequel's good too. It's just very different.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna spitfire some with like very short explanations. Stop Making Sense, the concert documentary about the Talking Heads concert. I watched that for the first time in the middle of the pandemic, and it just left me feeling full of life.
Oh, that's
Because
great.
it's a concert it's more than just a concert documentary. It was you can tell that like they planned to film this, if that makes sense. Um, and it's just fun and full of life and community. Um, love that. It's incredible. Stop making sense, even if you don't know who the talking heads are. It's great.
And then
Um,
start listening to them, because why were you not
yes.
listening to them yet?
Rocky was my other sports movie choice that I mentioned.
Good choice. Yeah,
It
that
was
makes
hard
sense.
for me to choose between Whiplash and Rocky. Rocky probably would have made more sense in that category, but I went with the harder one. Um, uh, and then where was the other one I was going to say? Paddington 2. Just like be kind to one another.
Hmm.
I love that movie. And then a couple of documentaries. The documentary "Won't You Be My Neighbor" about Mr. Rogers.
Oh man, that one's great.
Incredible documentary, super inspiring. And then one that I actually just watched, I was going to give a shout out to, and that's Daughters on Netflix. It is about this program, this daddy daughter dance program for men in prison, um, incarcerated men. Just like I watched it a few days ago, and every time I pick up my daughter, I dance with her now.
Oh,
So,
sweet.
very like incredible movie, incredible documentary. And then I'm gonna give my wife a pick. This is an official inspirational movie pick that I think is a really good pick. And I told my wife I would give it a special shout out just for her because it's one of her favorite movies, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. She loves that movie. I think it's a really good movie. It's kind of like a, you know, go and like be who you want to be kind of movie.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think it's a really fun movie too. I think. Have you ever seen that movie, Secret Life of Walter Mitty?
No, I remember seeing the trailer,
Yeah.
and even the trailer was like moving
Yeah.
at the time. I know it's one of the, like, I think it was, is that one of the earliest pivots for Ben Stiller to start directing less comedies and more serious stuff? Because I know now isn't,
Probably.
yeah, because I think he had pretty consistently just been working on comedies, because
Mhm.
that was after Tropic Thunder.
It was. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember it being received fairly decently at the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I've met a couple people who that's one of their absolute favorites. So
Yeah.
that one has a good pedigree.
So that's a special shout out for my wife. So do you have to name one that your wife would want you to shout out for her?
Oh, I don't know. She loves. I think she didn't mention any, but I'll mention she stands Peanut Butter Falcon.
Oh, great one.
That's
Yeah.
a really, really good one. That whenever
Yeah.
I think she even mentioned it when we were chatting and thinking of ones. She's also a big fan of The Farewell. That's also, I think, from the same year.
The Farewell
Um,
is great. That's another
It's super
2019.
good. Yeah, that one. Just the quick premise for both of those listening, because they might be lost under just lost at the
Yeah.
time. Because gosh, that's 6 years ago.
Mhm.
But Peanut Butter Falcon is a man with Down syndrome breaks out of basically a home that is not even actually made for him. It's made for the elderly, but the town has no care for him.
Yeah.
Because he wants to go participate in a wrestling
Yeah.
Pro
Pro wrestling
and
kind of thing.
and this one guy, Shia LaBeouf, helps him get there.
Yeah.
Along with I forget her name, Madam Web. What's her name?
Yes.
I don't remember.
Stewart.
Before the Fall with Madam Web.
Yes.
So
Is it
but
Kristen
she
Stewart?
helps.
Is that who it is?
No, that's not Kristen Stewart.
Who am I thinking of?
Gosh, I can't remember her name. But she, they all go down and are helping him get there to do that. And it's a touching film. It's good. It's elevated by the fact that the man with Down syndrome actually has Down syndrome.
Right.
So a Down syndrome actor gets to be
Yeah.
in it, and he's also good.
He's great,
good
yeah.
in the film.
It's
and then The Farewell.
Dakota Johnson, by the way. I looked it up.
That's right. Thank
Yeah.
you. The Farewell is Aquafina plays the lead character, and then I forget the director's name. But
I'm gonna beat
uh,
myself up because
no, go for it. You can get it while I'm describing
Yeah.
it. Aquafina plays the director's is the director's stand-in basically because the
Lulu Wang.
director's Lulu Wang.
Mhm.
Thank you. It basically Lulu Wang's real grandmother at the time was dying of cancer,
Mhm.
but no one in her family told her that because it is customary not to tell your elderly if they are dying
Mhm.
in China because they start dying early, so to speak, as
Sure.
in their personality changes and everything. Like, it's just so the whole family is going to visit because one of the relatives are getting married,
Yeah.
but in reality everyone's visiting to say their final respects
Mhm.
before she will die of cancer. And it's an interesting dilemma, like morally speaking,
Yes.
but it's an excellent piece of drama as a part of media, like as media to consume as consumers. So it's and it's great. It's very, very funny, by the way.
Yes.
When I saw it in theaters, I was probably me and one other person in a packed theater understood the assignment and were laughing like every 10 minutes because it's so funny.
It's very
But it
funny
is
and very
very,
emotional.
very sad.
Yeah.
So, but it's inspiring.
It
The
is.
two of them. Peanut Butter Falcon inspires you to recognize that each person has aspirations and we should encourage each other to flourish and pursue them. And the farewell being one that just think often of the mortality of your fellow man,
Yes.
not in a bad way, but in a way that can enhance the present moment to be more meaningful.
Yeah.
So it's yeah. I thought those were my semi shout outs. Can't speak for my wife, but I think she would probably mention those.
Catherine, right? Yes.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, great sort of picks by her, through you.
I hope she co-signs them. I think she will.
Yes. Well, yeah, that's all these movies are great. All of our shout outs, great. Hopefully people take away a few. I would encourage people to like just take one or two of these movies that we mentioned, and put them, on your calendar to watch over the next couple weeks, and just find ways to be inspired to, it's a new year. There's new things ahead of us. Let's use film to be inspired toward those things. Maybe even be inspired in a way unexpected. That's always the best, when you are inspired by a piece of art and that's totally takes you off guard. I'll read off our lists real quick as we end. Melvin's list included It's a Wonderful Life, Waves, The Way Back, technically, but really Everything Everywhere All at Once. I'm gonna let you say the name of this one so that I don't get it right. Is it Puella?
Puella, Magi, Madoka, Magica.
Okay, yes. I was gonna say Puella, but Puella is probably right. Puella, Magi, Madoka, Magica. And also Tar. That was his list. My list included Ikiru, The Untouchables, Whiplash, Little Women, the Greta Gerwig 2019 version, and Soul. So those are our top 5 inspirational movies for the new year for you, hopefully. And so go watch those movies, pop them on your watch list, and yeah, hopefully this is a good year. You know, we we know what's coming for 2025. I don't know what to expect from it, but I'm not gonna say anything else about all of that. So this is not a politics podcast, thank God.
I'm glad our minds went to the same sad, dark place.
But alas, I don't know what's ahead of us, but hopefully we still have our inspirational
Christ
movies
returning. That's all I know.
But yeah, any final thoughts before we go, Melvin?
I think if you finished, if each month you watched one of these movies we mentioned,
Mm,
you'd probably be in good vibes. And
yeah.
you'd have really interesting things to talk about. Maybe even a movie/book club, whatever. Movie club, but with the spirit of a book club?
Yeah.
Not sure. I don't know. But do that. That's what I recommend.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea. Kind of watch you've got 10, technically 11 movies to work with. And then you can choose one of the honorable mentions to throw them for that last month.
Yeah. That'd be great.
Yeah, good idea. Yeah, I might do that too. I'm thinking about it. So that's all we have for this week. I hope you feel inspired to watch one of these inspirational movies or all of them. But yeah, I'll make sure again to put all the places to find Melvin and Cinematic Doctrine in the episode description. So make sure you go click those links and go follow Melvin, keep up with what he's doing, listen to his show. A good transition point might be to go. I was on for a discussion of Howl's Moving Castle. And so you can search for that in his podcast feed if you're like, I want to hear Eli on his podcast and then listen to all the other episodes.
Do it.
But yeah, that's all we have for this week. Next week, we are going to be jumping into our next Spielberg movie, which is AI, artificial intelligence. So that I've already recorded that. It was a great discussion. So look forward to that. And that's all we got. I have been Eli Price for Melvin Benson and the Cinematic Doctrine podcast. You've been listening to The Establishing Shot. We will see you next time.
We were happy here. For a little while.
But look, I figure it this way. Better to be king for a night than schmuck for a lifetime.